across society. And justice is about fairness for all. It's something that children can understand. It means people getting the just reward for their effort. It means a fair pay for fair work, and governments only taking a fair share of tax. It means helping those in need, but not that it becomes unfair to others. Now, people across Scotland suffer the daily grind of injustice in so many aspects of their lives. If you look at education, I ask, is there any greater injustice in the way in which the SNP are failing a generation of young people? Classroom violence spiralling out of control. Pupils and teachers fear going into school. Last year, a physical assault or verbal abuse took place every 2 minutes of the school day. But teachers feel powerless. Their hands are tied by the SNP, who don't believe those responsible for threats and violence should even be punished. Instead, victims are required to take part in what are called restorative conversations. Conversations in which teachers are told they shouldn't use terms like bully, because this could be disempowering. Now, where is the justice for those pupils who want to learn and those teachers who want to teach? Where are the consequences for the violent and disruptive minority? The truth is, there are none. Instead of preparing children for life in the real world, the SNP are teaching a generation of children to forget the principle of personal responsibility. And John Swinney's government is also setting children up to fail by letting educational standards plummet. The so-called curriculum for excellence downgrades the critical acquisition of knowledge in favour of experiences. And after almost 18 wasted years, the SNP's latest daft idea is a new curriculum that will focus on big ideas. That's what their Education Scotland Quango published at the end of December. The parents are sick and tired of jargon, of failed initiatives and meaningless rebrands. They just want schools to do their job, to give children the knowledge and skills they need in life to thrive and prosper in the real world. And here are my common sense suggestions to fix the injustice in education. Deal effectively with disruptive pupils. Empower teachers to remove abusive and dangerous students. And return to a knowledge-based curriculum that has previously served Scotland so well. And let's look at housing. Scotland's housing market is broken and unjust. More than a third of Scottish councils have declared housing emergencies. And for many young people, even those earning a decent wage, home ownership has become a distant dream. But the SNP's response to all this is a housing bill that won't build a single house. Nor will they cut taxes for home buyers or help people get on the property ladder. They will, however, make permanent temporary rent controls. Rent controls which the SNP were warned repeatedly would not work, having already failed in cities across Europe. And the result of all this has been rents rising faster in Scotland than they are in London. Young people paying so much that they've no hope for saving up a deposit to buy. But the SNP don't really care if their policies do good, as long as they sound good. Virtue signalling in pursuit of attractive headlines is the SNP way. But there are common sense ways to fix this. Scrap their counterproductive rent controls. Stop making life difficult for small house builders who face Byzantine net zero regulations. Reduce tax on home purchases. All of this is necessary and indeed just. Then there is the NHS. Now, the deal is that access to treatment should be available when we need it. It really is as simple as that. But this deal has been broken by the SNP far too often. People pay their taxes but can't get to see a GP when they need to. They're left waiting in agony for routine procedures like hip and knee replacements, or waiting in the trolley of an A&E department for hours. Delayed cancer treatments can be the difference between life and death. Under the SNP, the NHS is not working. Yet it receives more money than ever before. Where, I ask, are all those tens of billions of pounds going? Well, we recently discovered that more than 300 NHS and health quango bosses are each paid more than £100,000. Patients are suffering, doctors and nurses are run ragged, while an army of bosses pocket massive salaries. People are rightly fed up after years of broken SNP promises. The Nationalists have instilled injustice in our NHS. There are solutions to all of this. Reduce bureaucracy. Stop wasting staff time with form filling. Cut down on the bloated cast of managers who do not treat a single patient. Instead, and this really is basic common sense, put the money directly where it is needed, and that is the front line. What of rural Scotland? Farmers put food on our plates. They're custodians of the countryside. They're out in all hours and in all weather. Yet they're treated with disrespect by the SNP and Labour. Did you know that the rural spend is the only budget being cut by John Swinney's government? And the UK government have decided to deliver an even bigger blow. Rachel Reeves' family farm tax is a spiteful attack on those who want to preserve their farms for future generations. It is simply not fair, but such injustice afflicts the wider rural community. The SNP have failed to upgrade key roads. Lives are being lost as a result. And despite today's Glensannox sailing, island communities continue to be failed. People in Scotland's rural communities are deprived of these critical infrastructures and services, yet at the same time, they're being forced to accept an industrialisation they don't want. This is in the form of vast highways of super pylons across our beautiful countryside. And all of these issues can be put right. Justice can prevail. Reverse the family farm tax, build and improve roads, deliver ferries, empower rural Scots who know their needs much better than some minister sitting in Edinburgh. I now turn to what the SNP has done to Scotland's councils. Over almost 2 decades, they have systematically stripped power from local communities. The SNP always think they know best, imposing their inflexible, centralised agenda. They have also, and quite deliberately, underfunded councils year after year after year, and that's why councils are now forced to consider punishing council tax hikes. And it's why residents keep paying more in return for poorer services. Bins that don't get collected in time, libraries and leisure centres being shut down, potholes that never get fixed. We would flip the relationship between the Scottish Government and local councils on its head. So it's not government telling communities how things should be run, but the other way around. And a massive area of growing injustice in Scotland is the tax regime. Hard-working Scots keep having to pay more for less. Taxpayers across the country put in the hard graft, day in, day out, to provide for themselves and their families. But they end up picking up the tab for the SNP's nonsense, like chauffeur-driven trips to the football and long-haul flights. They're paying for schools that can't keep people safe, hospitals that are buckling under the pressure, and ineffective government that ignores what people need. And any concept of demanding value for taxpayers seems to have been abandoned by all of the left-wing Holyrood parties. A parliament who thinks there's no limit to how much it can take from those who work so hard for their families. So where is the justice for Scottish taxpayers? Now, the SNP get away with this blatant injustice because, as we saw with the budget last week, no other opposition party in Parliament will challenge them. I know we are the only party who can stand up against injustice in Scotland. John Swinney and Anna Sarwar may be committed to public service. They've both been politicians for many, many years. But I don't believe either of them are fuelled by the same sense of purpose. Fighting for justice and fighting against injustice is what drives me. But John Swinney's career has been driven by one thing, and that is a desire to break up the United Kingdom. On practically every other issue, he's chopped and changed principles, discarded values and altered his views. He was a firm backer of Alex Salmond, then became Nicola Sturgeon's staunchest ally. He's not stood by his values for anything except for the case of Scottish separation. And then there's Anas Sarwar, another template politician who only seems driven by personal ambition. Now, there's nothing wrong with believing in a cause, as John Swinney does, or personal ambition, as Anna Sarwar is. But I believe the public need more than that from politicians in an age where trust is breaking down. And I'm motivated by the values that I've held throughout my life. They're ingrained in my character. Fighting for justice will not change. But I do want to change how things are done in the Scottish Parliament. This will be central to the Scottish Conservative campaign in the 2026 election. Change. And as of last week, we are now the only party standing for change. Labour have quietly dropped that slogan, the won in the general election. They've told journalists that it's gone, vanishing just as quickly as their approval ratings. The public want to change after my party let them down. But now Labour are running scared of change because they've already let the public down. Now, after a decade plus in power, not after a decade plus in power, but within months, they've already broken so many promises. Here is some of what they promised. No increase in national insurance. No new taxes on farmers. Keep the winter fuel payment. Protect single-sex spaces. No cliff edge for North Sea oil and gas. Cut energy bills. And all of those commitments and more now broken. Anna Sarwar won't stand up to Sir Keir Starmer no matter the damage he inflicts. Anna Sarwar looks even more spineless when it comes to standing up to John Swinney. We saw it last week with the SNP budget. Labour votes mean that it will pass. They didn't get or even ask for anything in return. And this is the same Anna Sarwar who abstained in the Nicola Sturgeon no confidence vote after she misled Parliament, and who also backed Sturgeon's Gender Law and Humza Yousaf's Hate Crime Act. I've got no idea what Labour stand for, and neither do they. And now Labour this week unveiled a new slogan, and it is New Direction. It really should be No Direction. Sarwar thought he was headed in the direction of Bute House, but he now looks completely lost. He thinks that taking on the SNP means trying to become the SNP. Labour have dropped the change slogan. Well, I will happily and proudly pick it up. It's what the people of Scotland desperately want to see. Change at Holyrood. Because next year, change can only mean one thing, and that is to remove the SNP from power. They must be held to account after 18 years of lies, division, broken promises, and the worst record of any Western government. This is the change the people of Scotland are crying out for. The SNP must face justice. And I don't mean locking them up. Well, maybe I do. But I mean locking them out of office to finally ensure that they are held to account for what they have done to our beloved country. Now, in the past few weeks, John Swinney's been pretending to be a new man. It's laughable. This careerist has been round the SNP cabinet table so long that he could be mistaken for a chair. His attempted relaunch is stranger than Twitter became X, and it's worse than when Coca-Cola became New Coke, which is deemed the biggest marketing mistake in history. And I'm not buying John Swinney, the rebrand or the relaunch. He's not changed one single bit. John Swinney must think people are daft as John Swinney tries to distance John Swinney from John Swinney. Glad I got that out. Because what really motivates him still is a desire to break up our country. He stood by Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Murrow for all these years. Only my party can deliver justice by removing the SNP, because Labour actually agrees with their harmful left-wing agenda. We are the only party putting forward a positive vision for change for Scotland. A proud Scottish Conservative vision where justice is done and seen to be done. Where fairness is not just for some, but for all. Where opportunity and the chance to get ahead is the right of everyone. Where power is not centralised, but lies with communities. Where aspiration is encouraged and success is celebrated. Now, I'm wholly realistic about where my party is just now. But whatever the polls show, the sands of Scottish politics are constantly shifting. The 2026 election is all to play for. And it all depends on us as a party, what we do, how we fight the campaign to come. Our actions, our efforts, and our values. What we stand for will define what we achieve in 2026. Now, I'm no longer a journalist, but I'm still driven to stand up for what's right, to help people who feel ignored, and to fight against the powerful. I want justice. Justice for the people of Scotland who have suffered far too long under the SNP. Justice for everyone who's been left behind by our broken politics. And if you want change at Holyrood, then the Scottish Conservative Party is ready to represent you. And we are the only ones who will. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. That's very kind. Thank you. And I'm happy to take some questions from journalists. I've been handed a list, so I'll just work my way through this list, if that's okay. First up, I've not seen him, but Tom Gordon for the Daily Mail. Tom, back left, tight down.
Thanks, Russell. You talked about picking up the mantle of change from Labour. There is already a party out there with a name that means change, and it's after your votes. How do you plan to confront the challenge from reform? And also, you said you weren't buying the John Swinney rebrand. What did you make of tear-stained Nicola Sturgeon yesterday?
So, in respect of the first question, my job is to lead the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party. It's to show the people of Scotland that we understand the issues that truly matter to them, and to show them that we are in their corner, that we will fight for justice for them. And that's all I can focus on. any vote for any other party can only help the SNP, and I think it's critical that we get that message across. In respect of the personal news relating to the former First Minister, you know, it's obviously a private matter. I've got a calculator on my phone that's perhaps less calculating than the former First Minister. But, you know, she doesn't do very much at all without a reason. But I guess it may well be connected to ongoing issues that are happening elsewhere. But I guess time will soon tell. So. Okay, so Dan Sanderson. I don't know if Dan's with us. It might not be Dan. There's a TBC. No. Anyone else in the Telegraph here? No. Okay. David Walker, Express.
So, you spoke about budget negotiations. How did your budget negotiations go for SNP, and what would it take for you to back the budget? And the second question, based on Tom, as you said at the start, SNP still have questions to answer. What are these questions you need to answer? Have you answered?
Say the second part of the question again.
You said at the start that SNP still have questions to answer. What are the questions you need to answer about Sturgeon's break-up yesterday?
Okay, right. Well, so in respect to the first question, the budget, you know, we set out, myself and my colleague Craig Hoy, who's our Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Finance, set out a range of measures that we would like to have seen considered and included in the budget. Primarily, it was about ensuring the hard-working Scots who constantly face tax rise after tax rise were given a break. We wanted to see businesses given a break as well, and we wanted to see home buyers given a break. It's an accumulation of various requests, which basically it appears the SNP government didn't give much consideration to at all. It seems that they were, knowing that they were in all likelihood, as is now transpired, going to do a deal with one of the other left-wing parties and inflict yet another damaging budget on the people of Scotland. In terms of questions to answer, I think I could stand here all day and try and think of all the issues in which the SNP have got questions to answer. I mean, the ferries is a prime example. We still don't know how on earth 2 boats ended up costing almost £500 million in a process which I believe was riven with corruption. So, Lewis Mackenzie.
Hi, Russell. The New Year, the BBC parodied you in one of their sketches with the suggestion that not many people in Scotland know who you are.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about that in terms of getting your message across? And in terms of 2026, what is your ambition for the party? You said you're being ballistic. Is your aim to maintain the number of MSPs you have, or what is your expectation at the next election?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that comedy sketch, if you can call it that, was probably watched by fewer people than are in this room. No offence to the BBC viewing figures, but and I happened to watch it, and I was taken aback, to say the least. But it was quite funny. And the point they were making was the one that you just suggested, and I think that's partly due to the fact I'm not a career politician. I've come to this later in life from outside the political bubble, and I think that's to my advantage. But of course, in this world, it's important. This is one of the reasons I'm doing this speech today, and this is one of the reasons I'm out engaging with real people and doing broadcast interviews. It's because I need to bring our message forward to the people of Scotland and show them that we are on their side. So, yeah, thank you. Andy from the P&J.
Back to the rural communities part of this. You said you could empower them, so I'm just thinking, so how you would empower them? And on the pylons, without breaking the bank, realistically, how do you get energy from A to B without building them? You can't keep everyone happy all the time.
Well, start empowering the rural communities by binning the family farm tax, which is going to harm family farmers across Scotland and which is going to put food safety, food security at risk. It's a completely wrong-headed thing to do. I mean, I'm proud to represent a party with really credible rural voices. My colleague Tim Eagle, who's here today, who's our Shadow Agricultural Secretary, and my colleague Rachel Hamilton, again, people who understand rural Scotland. And we will bring forward a range of specific measures which will empower rural communities.
On the pylons as well?
Pylons, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, what's being proposed in so many communities is appalling. I don't think you even need to live in these areas to see the damage this will do to natural beauty. And I think it's entirely right that communities are heard and there's a way to be found where, at the very least, in some of these areas, the pylons, the cables are put underground. John Bootham, sometimes.
Russell, to say that you are really going to tell people that any vote for anybody else other than the Conservatives is a vote for the SNP is not going to stop reform. Neither is a strategy that ignores them because they've really not done very much in Scotland, or, as your critics say, ape them. What is your concrete strategy for challenging these people? One of your colleagues said to me yesterday that there's a dark energy about them, and that's the difficulty you have.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think we all see is that this party that you speak about plays by different rules and has different standards applied to it. We don't know what they represent specifically in Scotland. We don't know any of their people. The ones we have seen, some of them believe in breaking up the United Kingdom, which is at odds with our supporters' position. So it'll be curious to see how they evolve. But all we can do in the meantime is show people across Scotland that we are credible, that we understand business, we understand fairness, we want to lower taxes, we want to improve education. And after 25 years of failed left-wing socialist evolution, there is another way.
Continue to eat your support. There's a poll, a subsample of a poll, only 300 people, fair enough, last night, which shows Reform at 18 and you at 11. They are taking away, albeit at the margins, some of your members and some of your councillors. How do you combat that?
Well, by doing our job and doing it well and being loud and proud and being out there. I mean, we cannot account for the activities of others. And my job is to earn the trust of people, to rebuild that trust and show people that we get it. It's not very sophisticated, maybe, but it is about explaining those simple premises to people. So, Alistair Grant from the Scotsman.
Hi, Russell.
Hi there.
Just going on from John's question there, I mean, obviously, when you look at the polls, clearly the message from the Tories, north and south of the border, when it comes to reform, is not getting through to a lot of people. They're rising and rising with the polls. I think one poll has them almost level with Labour on a UK-wide basis. I mean, what is your message to those voters out there, specifically who are thinking about voting reform? It can't just be that if you vote for this party, you're effectively letting in the SNP. Now, if we just do a handbrake turn to another issue as well, I just wonder what your views were on the assisted dying legislation. I think last time we talked about this, you said that you were still considering it, you were waiting to see the legislation itself. Have you come to a firm view on that?
Sure. So going back to reform, I'm at risk of repeating myself. We cannot account for what they will or won't do, or indeed how people see them, or choose to engage with them. All we can do is set out our vision for why. We've in that Parliament in Edinburgh for the past 10 years plus, it's only been the Scottish Conservatives that have done the hard yards and stood up to the SNP, and more often than not, Labour have fallen in behind the SNP. And I think we need to double down on explaining that to people. There is no easy fix. I mean, being tempted by what amounts to a protest vote will only benefit the SNP. So, and in respect of assisted dying, I've gone into this with my eyes wide open. Our party will allow a free vote because it's a matter of conscience. I think the debate that took place in the House of Commons was very enlightening, perhaps for all the wrong reasons, not least due to the shrunken timescale in which it took place. But that has actually made me a lot more cautious than my instinctive position, which was that this could be something that would be helpful to people who are suffering greatly at the end of life. I think there are so many issues that will need to, unlike what the Scottish Parliament has done before with legislation, this will need proper, robust scrutiny. And as and when that process takes place, I'll come to a view. So, yeah. Andrew from the Herald.
Thanks, Russell. Just on reform, the polls suggest it could be quite a messy result after the next Hollywood election. Would you work with any reform MSPs to keep the SNP out of government? Secondly, if I may, it's now been 3 months since Kenny Baisnott took over as the leader of the party. She's not been to Scotland. Is she scared of Scottish voters?
So in terms of the hypothetical arithmetic of how it will all look on May the 7th, 2026, I can't really answer that. You know, my job entirely is to return as many Scottish Conservative MSPs to Holyrood as possible, because every single one who's in there will be to the benefit of the people of Scotland and will act as a bulwark against the left-wing consensus. So it's far too soon to start talking about what things might look like. In respect of Kemi, you know, we communicate frequently. I spoke to her over the weekend, and she will be coming to Scotland soon, and I look forward to seeing her then. So, Sev, or Libby, perhaps it is Sev.
Morning, Russell.
Hi there.
Last week, Robert Jenrick said three specific things. He said that integration in the UK had failed. He said that there were hundreds of thousands of Pakistanis that had come over with an alien culture to the UK, and that they would import medieval attitudes to women. Do you agree with him?
So I was asked this in the last week, but in a broadcast interview, and I said it's not perhaps language I would have used, but I think what he and others are vexed, understandably, about is the whole-scale rape of young girls in different parts of the country by gangs who primarily have been those of Pakistani Muslim origin. But we should be careful not to conflate those issues, and I think it's critically important that a proper inquiry takes place, just as I've argued in Scotland for a proper inquiry into the industrial scale abuse of children in Scottish football, which the Scottish Government have long resisted. So, Louise Wilson from Holyrood.
Hi, Russell.
Hi there.
Hi. So this morning it's been confirmed that MSPs are to get a pay rise to nearly £75,000. That's obviously considerably more.
Was that because of the speech?
It's considerably more than the average salary. I mean, you talk about representing mainstream Scots. Do you think that Scotland will be happy that the parliamentarians are getting paid so much?
Well, I think, first of all, it's great that after 8 men asking questions, we've got a female journalist asking a question. So before they ever pop at us for our female-male representation. In terms of the pay negotiation, I didn't actually know that had been agreed, but I understand it's done by an independent body, much like most or all public sector pay negotiations, including the police, for example. So it is what it is, and you know, I don't set I've got nothing to do with setting my own wages, so, quite rightly. So Terry from Daily Business.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. Just a couple of points on the economy. Firstly, with regard to the budget talks, did you ask for reform of business rates? And secondly, you called for the burden of taxes to be lower to stimulate growth. And given the limited powers that the Scottish Government has over taxes, are you supporting SNP's demands for new powers over tax, such as corporation tax?
Well, so you know, we did call for business rates relief to be passed on to a range of sectors, which for years the Scottish Government have withheld, despite being in receipt of the money from the UK Government. I would be extremely wary of giving the Scottish Government any further tax raising powers, given that that's inevitably what they will do, is impose more taxes and then continue to increase them. So I think that would be a terrible idea. Simeon Kerr from the Financial Times.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Thank you. There's also been a lot of debate about net zero policies at the moment. Reform, for example, the Tories have been talking about drilling more oil and gas, but they're also talking about fracking onshore for shale gas, and also ending subsidies for the renewable industry. Where would you disagree with them?
So where do I disagree with?
In terms of their policies on net zero policies.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I mean, what we, first and foremost, we need to ensure that there's a proper, sensible, just transition. We've got a world-leading oil and gas sector in the northeast of Scotland, which we should be proud of and we should protect. In fact, Ed Miller to destroy, and of course the SNP are little different. It used to be at Scotland's oil, now they want nothing to do with it. But what I think is absolutely reckless is offshoring our, emissions to other countries just in order to chase a net zero goal that is probably unrealistic. And I think the whole issue needs to be properly looked at by the party at UK level and indeed the Scottish level, and I look forward to doing so. Thank you, everybody. That's very much appreciated. Very glad you all came along.